Now, I mentioned a bit earlier on that the Pentagon have said that the Navy Secretary is now out. How significant is this? As trailed, Simon Marks is LBC's Washington correspondent and joins me now. Simon.
It's very significant, Henry. I mean, the Secretary of the Navy has suddenly been defenestrated by Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, in the middle of a US naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. There was no advance warning that this move was coming. This is the latest in a series of purges that have taken place at the Pentagon. Early this month, we similarly suddenly learnt that the US Army's Chief of Staff had been dispatched, kicked out of the building. Now it's John Phelan, the Secretary of the Navy, who only came into office in March of last year. And when he was sworn in, he said, "I'm deeply grateful to President Trump for the opportunity to lead the Department of the Navy as we revitalize shipbuilding, sharpen our warfighting culture, and recruit America's finest sailors and Marines." So something has clearly gone very wrong, perhaps just over the course of the last few days. And we are beginning to get an indication of what has taken place behind the scenes, because the website Axios, citing an informed source from inside the Pentagon, is reporting tonight that John Phelan, the Secretary of the Navy, did not understand he wasn't the boss. His job is to follow orders given, not follow the orders he thinks he should be given. So clear tensions there between the Secretary of the Navy and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. And Henry, this is coming at a time when Congress, behind closed doors in classified briefings, is being presented with a very different series of facts by Department of Defense officials than the jingoistic bravado that is on display publicly when the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, briefs reporters from the Pentagon podium. We learnt today from exclusive reporting by the Washington Post that the Pentagon has warned Congress that even if peace is signed and sealed, it will take 6 months to clear the Strait of Hormuz of the mines that the Iranians are believed to have laid in the strategic waterway. Separately, you will know that President Trump repeats like a mantra that the Iranian military has been obliterated. They have no navy, they have no air force, they have no radar. He says they have no anti-aircraft systems. Well, again, behind closed doors, we learnt today that in recent days, a top Pentagon official has told the House Armed Services Subcommittee that the Pentagon believes that the Iranians still have thousands of missiles and drones that still pose a serious threat, a significant threat to the forces of the United States and to Iran's neighbors. So there are two completely different stories being told here. There's the one publicly that the White House is presenting. It's all going fantastically. Regime change has occurred. The war is already won. It's just that the Iranians haven't yet admitted it. And then what's taking place on Capitol Hill, which is classified briefings for lawmakers who are being told by Defense Department officials that this thing is grinding on and is going to have consequences for the world's economy that will continue for at least 6 months after any kind of peace agreement is struck between Washington and Tehran.
And it's worth pointing out, Simon, that this particular individual, John Phelan, he's not a sort of ex-naval officer. He had no military experience. He was a donor, I read, of $12 million he raised for President Trump's campaign, the most recent one. So this is not a sort of ex-military official who's fallen out with the president. This is one of his key allies.
Yeah, this was his pick. This was the pick of Pete Hegseth. Phelan was one of the people that was brought in to replace other people that had already been purged at the Pentagon, some of them having been deemed to fail loyalty tests to President Donald Trump's Make America Great Again, America First movement. Prior to his appointment, he was the founder and chairman of a private investment firm based, guess where? Palm Beach in Florida, a stone's throw from Mar-a-Lago. So this was someone that the president certainly thought, and Pete Hegseth certainly thought, they could rely on. And there is growing evidence that senior figures within the Pentagon, some of them, are becoming deeply concerned about some of the tactics that President Trump and Pete Hegseth have already engaged in Iran. And, you know, certainly these threats to bomb the country's electricity plants and its bridges, civilian targets that would compound existing claims that the United States may already have committed war crimes in Iran, that may be concentrating minds among the top brass at the Pentagon. Not saying that necessarily led to John Phelan's departure from the building today, but it's evident that there were suddenly tensions between him and his commanding officers. And when you're the Secretary of the Navy, your commanding officers are Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, and the Commander-in-Chief, President Donald Trump.
Thank you, Simon. Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent. We'll keep an eye on President Trump's Truth Social to see if he has any comments on this. You recall when he sacked the Attorney General Pam Bondi, he was quite praiseworthy of her afterwards. But given some of that reporting that Simon referenced, it does seem like there's clearly been some big disagreement internally. Simon Marks there reporting for LBC.